Without further ado, I want to tell you about Dan Johnson. 2 years ago in Marietta, the Access Experience, one of our first political performances, I said it takes more than waving a sign, wearing a pen, or yelling the name of the person that you support. You actually have to get involved. What impressed me about Dan, and I'm repeating this, some of you have already heard it, but for those of you who haven't, because it's a very important point to understand. What impressed me about Dan is Dan, as a teenager, took the time to find out about indefinite detention. And he reached out to me and asked me if I knew what that legislation was about and what it did, and I told him no. So he educated me, and I listened. People send me stuff all the time. And if it's something that they can show me that is what I call low-hanging fruit, verifiable and documented on government letterhead, then I pursue it, I educate myself, and I endeavor to educate others just as Dan endeavored to educate me. But what is more important about Mr. Johnson, he was a young man doing what many of us, sad to say, and I'm not talking about people out here. When I say many of us, I'm speaking in general, what many of us will not do for ourselves because we continue to drink corporate media Kool-Aid. That is the other big hurdle that we have to overcome in order for other liberty candidates like Brian Slawinski, Eugene Yu, one of my favorites, Catherine Bernard, and so many other people that have run that believe in 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. And the reason they are not getting elected is not because their message is not on point. It is because they are being blocked out by the media. We can defeat the Royals in the Republican Party, but our challenge next is to defeat the media. Dan Johnson found a way to overcome the lies that the Paul Browns who voted for indefinite detention, the Phil Gingreys, and the Jack Kingstons, who all voted for it, but have never been called on it. Dan Johnson gave me that low-hanging fruit that I was able to present to folk when I asked them, how much of the Constitution do you want? And they say 100%. I said, well, then why are you voting for this man? It was just simple cognitive dissonance. Deer in the headlights because they couldn't explain it. And that is how we win, people. Dan Johnson, he did the research. All we got to do is listen to it and stop drinking the media Kool-Aid. Hats off to Dan. Please give him a round of applause.
You guys hanging in there? Oh, come on. You guys hanging in there? Okay, good. You're staying up. So last time I didn't have a podium. This time I do kind of need one. It's very difficult to pull a 20-minute speech out of the thin air. But this is the first anti-NDAA concert in history. Now, I don't remember, maybe I'm wrong, I don't remember any Patriot Act concerts, anti-Patriot Act concerts. I don't remember any anti-Japanese American internment concerts. So what we're doing today is we're making history by starting small, moving our way up. We all see what's out, we all see the audience, we all see the empty chairs. We're not going to deny that. We're going to look at it, we're going to say, it starts here, and it moves on. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about how this got started and what exactly we're all here for. Why did artists, including what I'll be introducing later, which is one of the top 40 rock bands in the country, why are artists, speakers, and people from across the state and across the country coming together on one day and coming together for this event? Why are they here? Now, the National Defense Authorization Act is a bill typically passed every year by Congress to fund the military. And as many bills get going, it became a must-pass bill. We need to fund the military. We need to fund the military. Every single time, we need to fund the military. So it passes every single year, 52 years, or it's on 53rd year now. And in 2011, they snuck 2 riders in, sections 1021 and 1022. These 2 riders declare America legally a battlefield. Now, when America is legally a battlefield, that means torture, indefinite military detention, execution, without trial, without charges, without a day in court, are the law of the land. Now, when I came across this, I was shocked. Honestly, I stand in front of my computer screen. I'm watching the YouTube video I talked about earlier, 61 Senators Betrayed Today. I'm watching this YouTube video and going, no way, not in America. I grew up believing America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. This is the place for freedom. This is the place people across the world travel for freedom. That's why we're here. And seeing the NDAA absolutely baffling. I grew up studying the rise and fall of the Third Reich, the rise and fall of Nazi Germany, and the rise and fall of imperial Japan, and how a country can go from absolute freedom to absolute tyranny in a span of only 30 to 40 years. And what I found was this is the last step before you have an ultimate, what would be generally known as a police state. You have an ultimate tyranny, an ultimate police state. The NDAA and laws like it are the last step. The decree for the protection of people in the state of the Third Reich was passed only 2 years before the Germans invaded Poland. This decree, otherwise known as the Reichstag Fire Decree, and the portions of the Weimar or German Constitution it violated are not similar, but identical to the parts of the Constitution the 2012 NDAA and the Patriot Act violate. We have the same legal justification that Nazi Germany and the Germans had in 1933 here in America in 2014. So when I saw all of this, I decided I have to do more research. I did more research, about a month and a half. I decided on January 3rd, 2012 to take action. So started a Twitter account, a Facebook account, a YouTube video, and started putting these things together. And started reaching out to some local groups on campus. And we went down to our local city council meeting. Now, it's simple. You go down to city council, you decide that you have an oath to the Constitution. That oath is not to a piece of paper. That oath is to protect my rights. That's why you take that oath. So you have an oath to the Constitution. Just say this will never happen here. The military will never pick up an American citizen in the city, ever. Not a single person. All we want you to do is put that on paper. We were rejected. We were told to go back to basic government class. In fact, the email I got sent was, quote, "These students should have taken Government 160. They don't know the inner workings of our national government, and it's up to us, in some respects, to educate them." And we took that email, we took the response from the council. Robert Frost talks about 2 roads diverge in a wood. And I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. We took the road less traveled by. We could have, there was a fork in the road. We could have decided that's it, it's over. We could have decided that very few people showed up. Obviously no one cares. Obviously we're not going to do anything about this. Let's just go back to school and forget it. But we didn't. Instead, we took PANDA nationwide. And in 2012, we took on the U.S. Senate. And we won. We defeated 3 amendments to the NDAA that would have made it worse. In 2013, we launched Operation Homeland Liberty. This operation was at the state level to stop the military from detaining people using the state police and using state law enforcement. We introduced around 18 pieces of legislation, of which 8 passed committee. And one was 32-33 on the Colorado House floor. It came within 1 vote of being signed into law. And then we went to the local level. Today, 6 cities in 1 county have banned the NDAA, and currently 60 to 70 are working on it. Now, that's how we got started, and that's what brought us to this point. That's what brought Saving Abel, the Siren, Access Experience, and the speakers we have here today. That's what brought them here. A little laptop in a dorm room. Who's heard the term the War on Terror? 5 people. Who's heard the term the War on Terror? Okay. So we have a war on fear. Because terror is extreme fear, right? So instead of a terrorist, we might as well call him a fearist. So we have a war against fear. A war against an emotion. How silly is that? A war, what if Congress declares a war on sadness, would we all jump on board? And would we all just stop being sad? Oh no, there's those sadnessists out there that are going to make us all sad. We need to go fight them. And we need to grow you at the airport because otherwise you might be sad. This is ridiculous. The war on terror. And yet, as ridiculous as it is, it has a logical element. Why? What's the one word tyrannical dictatorships have used throughout history to control their people? Fear. If terror is extreme fear, and every single time, this is ridiculous, every single time something comes up, it's terrorism. If your food didn't show up on time, it's terrorism. The Malaysian plane that they still can't find, supposedly, they still can't find this plane. It's been almost 2 months. They knew nothing about it. It disappears off the map. They immediately scream, it was the Iranians, it was terrorism. Now they say, we have no evidence to back this up, and we're talking about black holes in the earth as a possible analogy on CNN. This is a possible solution. But it was terrorism. This idea of an abstract concept, it used to be communism. It was communism in Nazi Germany. It was communism during the McCarthy era here. But what does it mean? When a politician tells you, I'm declaring a war on terror, you buy fear. That's what we have in this country, with this war on terror. Now that America's a battlefield, what kind of things are happening? Anyone heard the name Cameron D'Ambrosio? Anyone know that name? You should. Cameron D'Ambrosio is 18 years old. Shortly after the Boston bombing happened, he rapped about it. Do I think that's stupid? Does it deserve 20 years in prison? 20 years in prison for rapping about a past event. He was acquitted by the jury, but the reason they got away with it is they called him a terrorist. We can go after you because you're a terrorist. You don't have any rights, so we're going to go after you. Another young man, Justin Carter, 18 years old, Austin, Texas. He's playing a League of Legends match. Now, am I the only person in this room who knows what League of Legends is?
No. League of Legends.
Yes, no? Okay, there's some people who know what it is. Excellent. There are fellow nerds in the house.
Dota 2.
So, League of Legends is a massive multiplayer online game. And on this massive multiplayer online game, you basically beat up other characters. It's every video game on the face of the planet. After a heated match on Facebook, he's called insane by another player. He responds with, oh yeah, I'm real messed up in the head. I'm gonna go shoot up a school full of kids and eat their still beating hearts. I'm a Yankee. Sorry. We call that sarcasm. However, a Canadian woman didn't think so. So she called the cops. They show up at his house and they take him in. They call him a terrorist and they take him in. So he hadn't been sentenced yet, but they're taking him in and he's held $50,000 bail. $50,000. Now, for comparison, in Nevada, a DUI is $2,500 bail. Serial killers get $30,000. $50,000 bail. Why? Because we call them a terrorist. We call him a terrorist, and that apparently negates all of his rights. He got out of prison because an anonymous donor gave him most of the bail money, and the judge refuses to stop prosecuting. Now, most people don't think of it that way. Most people think of terrorists as people from the Middle East who are about to blow up a building or blow up a train. But what happens is we've created a category called terrorists. In World War II, we called them saboteurs. We called them Irish Catholics. We called them Japanese Americans. We called them blacks. We called them Filipinos. We've created a category that we say have no rights. But But the category is not us. It's not, in particular, white people. So the category is not us, but that's okay. That's fine. But what happens when you create a category that has no rights is all the government has to do and will do is redefine that category to include you. I can give you example after example after example of young people like myself. Lexington, Kentucky. Drano and aluminum foil bombs. Anybody know what those are? Okay, so it's not a bomb. It's called that. It's aluminum foil in a cap and Drano in the bottom of a 2-liter bottle. You roll it over, it goes bang, and that's about all that happens. So, some 14, 15-year-old young guys, trying to be smart, they throw this in front of a neighbor's door. Well, the door opens out. So the neighbor opens the door, the bottle falls over, goes bang! And the neighbor calls the cops. Police show up. And they bring these young men in. There's no damage. There's no physical damage. There's no injury. What are they being charged with? Operating a weapon of mass destruction. Because we called them terrorists. Because we created a category that means guilty until proven innocent. And even after you're innocent, you're still guilty. That's what we've created in America, and that's what will allow them to utilize this on any person. So, America's a battlefield. Why should you care? Why does that matter? America's a battlefield. Because we have historical precedent for this. 1862. By a show of hands, who knows Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus? Several of you. Most people have not read that order. Proclamation 94 says not only that habeas corpus is suspended, but that the military shall take jurisdiction over any person considered disloyal to the Northern government. Lincoln detained 15,000 Northerners without trial and executed most of them. Happy days. The Supreme Court in Ex parte Milligan says no, you cannot do that. In fact, that the Constitution is a law for both rulers and men and protects us in times of war and in times of peace, and that any of its doctrines could be suspended during the great exigencies of government. It is a doctrine that leads directly to anarchy or despotism. That's a quote from the Supreme Court. Of course we ignore them. 1942, February 21st. Executive Order 9066. Most people know what that ended up as. Indefinite military detention of 110,000 Japanese Americans without charge or trial. And yet that order never says we're going to imprison you. It says nothing about imprisonment. It says nothing about prison. It says the military shall have control over certain areas of the country. It says the area of the country is a battlefield. So the last 2 times we've declared the entire country a battlefield, we've detained 15,000 and then 110,000 people, once because of their geographical location, once because of their race. Let's go to recent precedents. Big Bear Lake, California, last year. Christopher Dorner, ring a bell, anyone in here? The name Christopher Dorner, a couple of you. He was a former LA cop who was accused of killing other LA cops, had a manifesto online, all this stuff, right? So, when the police decided to go after him, they launched what was the largest manhunt in US history. And the military led it in Big Bear Lake, California. So Big Bear Lake, California, a little resort community, 3,000 people. Every single home was searched, regardless of whether you wanted them there or not. Regardless of whether you opened the door or not, your house was searched without a warrant because Dorner might be somewhere near you. He wasn't. Nowhere near Big Bear Lake, California. And when they finally showed up to go after him, they knew where he was. He was in a cabin. They had the cabin surrounded, but instead of capturing him and bringing him to justice, they basically firebombed the cabin and burned him alive. Now, even more recent, Boston Marathon bombing. Who saw the police response to the Boston Marathon bombing? Anybody? Okay. In Boston, that was led by the police. In Boston, the police locked it down. In Watertown, the military locked that city down. And house by house by house by house, they went in and they pointed guns at the women and the children and the people in those homes, and they raided the homes. How many bullets were fired at the alleged Boston bomber? 117, and they knew exactly where he was, and yet they fired bullet after bullet after bullet after bullet into the boat. Now, did they find him when they declared martial law in Watertown? Absolutely not. It was not until after that a citizen came out and said, "Oh, look, there's blood on my boat. Hey, everybody, come over here." And yet you can watch video of them going house to house by gunpoint. You can watch video of them searching people in the streets. You can watch video of them dropping people off in different cities and telling them to walk home, detaining people at the police station in Watertown, Massachusetts. This is not Baghdad, Iraq. This is Watertown, Massachusetts, and they're doing it to us here in our country. Those are two recent precedents. The military took control both times. In fact, and I'm going to paraphrase him, but Commander Adama from, I believe it's Battlestar Galactica, I'm sure I just butchered his name, but he said something along the lines of, when the police and military should be separate. When the military becomes the police, or the police becomes the military, you either get an inefficient military or a deadly police force. And this is what happens when the military takes control of the country, in certain areas of the country. And that's what the NDA allows them to do. So, as I introduce the next act to come on the stage, I'm going to leave you with three things. I always joke and I always point fingers at people who only talk about the problem, but never about a possible solution. They talk about the problem, they say, "Oh, America's horrible, we're all screwed, and we're all living in hell, and we'll never get out of this." But they never talk about the solution. Well, here's three suggested solutions. Number one, innocent until proven guilty. Every single time. I don't care if you call them a pedophile. I don't care if you call them a child kidnapper. I don't care if you call them a terrorist, or a saboteur, or an enemy. Innocent until proven guilty, or that category will be changed to apply to you and to apply to your children. Innocent until proven guilty every single time. Number two, take the information that you've been given today, several different speakers, several different bands, take the information you've been given today, look at it, and then spread it around. If you believe in the cause. If you don't, there's no need. Don't bother. Don't look it up. Don't waste your time. There's no need for that. But if you see what we see, that history repeats itself, and that when the NDA was challenged in court, the family of the Japanese Americans detained in World War II signed on as an amici to the lawsuit saying this could happen here again. If you see that this is the place to draw a line in the sand, then take the information and spread it. Number three, take back your cities. 6 cities and 1 county have banned the NDA already. I was on Russia Today television just a couple days ago talking about this. Over 6,000 people have seen that interview. Our Just a Mom speech, which was given in Nevada by our Nevada State Director, has been seen by over 200,000 people across the country. This is what happens when you start to take action, when you start to actually take back your cities, take back your county, and eventually take back your country.